So I just wanna talk about this thing that's in my brain. It keeps me from wanting to go on, but I want some gain. Maybe a little fame. Yeah, oh yeah.
Everybody, welcome back to the We the Patriots podcast. I'm your host, Sal Asante, and with me today, as special guest, we have Mr. Douglas Peterson. Is that correct in saying, my friend?
Yes, it is. Although I wrote the book under a pen name, William R. Douglas. But yes,
Right.
Yes.
Beautiful. So we have an author on here. I must say a fellow author, even though I penned only a PDF of our landscaping operation over here. It's fun to finally have another author on here.
Where are you at anyway?
Yep. We are in northern New Jersey.
New Jersey. Okay.
Yep.
Very good.
We're
I thought
located
by the
out.
antlers, you might be up north somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's cold. It's cold by me. Maybe not as cold as by you, but it's cold by me.
Yeah.
So I know you are located out. We were talking about it a little bit out near McHenry, which is kind of a big location in our book that we're going to talk about a little bit today.
Yeah. Northwest of Chicago, about an hour, the city of McHenry.
So I know your book really focuses on baseball. I'm curious, Mr. Peterson, do you come from a background of baseball? Do you play much baseball? How did you get into loving the sport?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in the 60s and played a lot of sandlot ball, which was still popular back then, and really learned the game well playing sandlot ball. And then eventually got involved in Little League. And then as an adult, I've been playing in a church softball league for since 1995 or something. So every Monday nights in the summertime.
Nice.
Softball Monday. So yeah, I've been playing the game for a long, long time. Avidly love the game. Go see the games. I went to the Field of Dreams game with the White Sox Yankees.
Did you?
Ago.
You lucky.
Last year I went to the Cubs Reds Field of Dream game. So
I was going to ask now. So are you a North Side or a South Side Chicago fan?
I'm a South Sider. Yeah.
Okay.
Born and raised on the southwest side of Chicago.
All right.
Through most of my childhood. Moved up to the north side in 1974, but I retained my love of the Chicago White Sox.
Okay. So you kept that through and through. And now, so what age was that you moved up to the north side?
I was in between freshman and sophomore year of high school back.
Oh, that was too late to change anything. That was hard and stuff.
Oh yeah. Talk about setting your ways. I was setting my ways.
Oh, there was no doubt about it. So you carried that through. Did you end up playing in college at all?
No.
Okay.
I only went to a junior college, got a degree in journalism, but did not play ball. I tried out for high school ball and at the time I had other interests and I didn't pursue it.
I saw that you were big into IT as well. Is that kind of where your career kind of started kicking off?
Yes. Got involved in the IT field back in the 80s. Still involved in it and getting close to the end of it. Right now I work for the Boeing company. So
really?
I'm working for Boeing since
Very nice.
2021.
Wow. Very nice. Very nice. So you came out of there out of COVID, it looks like.
Yeah, I had a 20-year run with Walgreens and their corporate IT. And they sent everybody home in March of 2020 when this thing started to take off. And then they outsourced our jobs.
I'm sure.
So I had a little lapse in time that had time to finish my book. So
when did you get to start writing that book?
I actually started writing it in the fall, of 2016.
Okay.
And finished it in the fall of 2020.
Got it. And so that book for everybody out there, why don't you give them the title of that book that I just started reading?
Sure. So I'll even hold it up. So it's called The Death and Resurrection of Baseball, Echoes from a Distant Past.
And for everybody out there, really started reading this yesterday, maybe the night before, and really haven't been able to take my eyes off it whenever I have an opportunity, whenever I'm not working.
Yeah.
So without giving away too much, why don't you tell them what this book's about?
Sure. So it's a very unique story. You're not going to find another story like it.
No.
40 years from now, our time, there's a second American Civil War. And between now and that horrible event in the future, the popularity of baseball, which is clearly on a downward trajectory, particularly at the youth level, that begins to accelerate. And when the war starts out, it's like the nail in the coffin, and baseball actually dies as a sport. It becomes extinct. And fast forward 100 years later, so in our time, it's 140 years later.
Right.
A 12-year-old boy by the name of Joe Scott is our hero, and he stumbles upon a relic in an old battlefield from the war. And the relic, he finds out later, has a tie back to this extinct game called baseball. And he becomes the conduit for rediscovering the sport and trying to reintroduce it into the culture of the post-war America, which has recovered well, but it's still missing large chunks of its previous culture. Most significantly, the game of baseball.
Oh yeah. I mean, you say most significantly, but I mean it was all that bedrock, and that's kind of what baseball really is to a lot of people. Is that bedrock? You look back to baseball, it really feels like it has been our pastime ever since we really came together after that Civil War.
Sure,
And,
absolutely. It's always been a metaphor for America for
right,
well over 100 years.
Right, and it's a good barometer of culture, I think, of where we're at.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
with the youth baseball, it is tough. It's really tough to see because now numbers are a weird thing, because it seems like numbers start going up again. But I actually work in the private baseball industry, right?
Okay.
So I don't get to work too much with the towns. We work hand in hand, try to help out, give them some space every now and then, or let them bring their kids in. But without having the money involved in baseball, I'm sure you went through it. Do you have kids, Mr. Peterson?
Yes, 3 kids.
So did you bring them up through Little League?
Yes, I brought my firstborn son, brought him up through Little League, pretty much all the way up into junior high.
Yeah.
Coached on and off, and of course went to all the games. So I had a daughter, played a couple of seasons of pigtails softball, but she lost interest in it, and the youngest one, she had no interest in playing ball at all. So, but my son Scott, Joe, who's one half of the character, Joe Scott, the other, my brother's, his name's Scott. So I took the 2 names, and that's how I came with the character name.
I love that.
But
but
I raised my son well. He's a White Sox fan too.
Right. But you have to notice that as a parent, the absurd costs sometimes of the outside baseball, the non-Little League, because the Little League, and even now I get to see every now and then a posting of the prices. And to be honest, it's absurdly low in Little League, which I think kind of pits the fathers or the coaches of those teams in a bad position, because they're not really getting recognized for the work that they're doing.
Yeah.
I think that really hurts because, as our facility works, we really are not one of the more expensive programs, and it's tough to look out and see how it seems like a price gouging industry, once you get away from Little League.
Yeah, once you get away from the, I call it the in-house league out here.
Right.
I don't know what they call it there, but once you get away from the in-house league, the travel ball is very popular, but it's exorbitantly expensive, and it prices out a lot of parents that they just don't have the money to, pay the initial costs.
Right.
And then there's all the travel costs for all the hotels and meals and gas and everything else. And then the other thing is that travel ball, when it becomes so popular, and then at the expense of the house leagues, when the house leagues shrink or go away, like we have, when I started out with my son in Little League, there were 3 leagues in and around McHenry. 2 of them are completely gone. They have completely vanished. And the league that is still popular excuse me, fighting a cold. But the league is still popular in town.
Right.
It has shrunk by 2/3.
Really?
We had a 50th anniversary of the league back in the early Y2Ks, and there were 600 kids in the league, and now there's 200. There are multiple divisions, 6-8 teams per division, and now I mean it shrunk. Like I say, it shrunk by 2/3.
Right.
And so you have this dichotomy of you have the travel ball is popular because the parents want to see if maybe they can get a scholarship for baseball and go to
Sure.
college or something, right? So that's the lure there. But then when you start doing that, and then you have the diminishing numbers with the house league, it's a recipe for disaster because
Oh yeah.
the parents have fewer options to get their child involved in ball. And then, add on 15, 20 years and you have less adults that are fans of the game.
Right.
And if you have less adults that are fans of the game, you have less adults that are buying tickets to the game. So
Right.
you can see where all this has a kind of a snowball effect.
A huge snowball effect. Yeah.
And I play on that, obviously, in the storyline. I extrapolate that out 40 years from now. And like I say, and then towards the end, at least in the book, there's a 3-year labor strike at the professional level, and that really does some serious damage.
Right. But it seems so repetitive at the professional level at this point that I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is really tough to, as an average American, to really grasp the numbers that these athletes are getting nowadays. And it's not just baseball. It really does spread across into football and basketball. You have guys earning
Sure.
40, 50, $60 million a year to play a children's game.
I know.
And we're out here breaking our backs, sometimes worse than them for what? For pennies on the dollar compared to them. And it feels pretty terrible.
Right. If you're a dad or a mom and you want to take this one kid to a ball game, at the professional level, I mean, you better have at least $100.
That's ridiculous for just a dad and his kid to go to a baseball game.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times more than that. We had opening day tickets go on sale here for the White Sox. And I was looking at the prices and, you're looking at, just $150 just for 2 tickets, or $200, $300,
right?
Depending where you want to sit. That doesn't include parking, your food.
I was going to say, let's mention parking. Let's mention all the food, and if God forbid you want to have a beer.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
No, I took my fiance out to a Yankee game. Of course, Yankee games are even worse. But you go out to a Yankee game, not even a postseason game. We ended up spending, probably $30 on parking, $80 for the tickets, then another $40 for the food. And by the time we left with all the money we spent, it was probably a $200 excursion.
Yeah, sure.
Not even a playoff game.
Right.
You're better off just going for the value at Yankee Stadium, getting a playoff ticket at $100 because at least you're watching better baseball.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And that's just not right. To me, that's not right. You should be able to go to the summer ballpark, spend $20 and be able to get a soda pop with the ticket.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another thing I see happening too at the youth level is the fact that, because the house leagues, at least I don't know about out there, but at least around here, the house leagues, the pattern was you would get together a couple of times during the week before the season starts, you practice.
Yeah.
And then when the season starts, there's no more practices.
Absolutely. That is 100% the same.
You just go to the games.
Mm-hmm.
And because sandlot ball is practically extinct, the only chance the kids are getting to get that repetition in is a couple games before the season starts, and then during the season it's only in the game.
It's so discouraging.
Whereas the house league, the travel ball, obviously they're practicing practically every day and every month of the year they're practicing. But so for a child who is frustrated because they go up to the plate in a house league and they're striking out every single time, I mean, that's no fun for them. It's a heck of a lot easier to go out to a soccer field and kick a ball around.
Oh yeah.
And no disrespect to the soccer fans out there. I know there's very highly skilled soccer players, obviously.
Mhm.
But for just a kid to go out and have fun on a field, how do you compare trying to hit a little ball traveling at, 50, 60 miles an hour that, oh, by the way, could hit you and hurt you versus, kicking
Right.
a ball on the ground,
Right.
I see that as another thing that's damaging the sport.
Yeah, it's the technical skill aspect for sure. I mean, you get into when it comes down to it, football is brute strength, basketball is all athleticism, and soccer is all athleticism and endurance.
Yeah.
And
Right.
when you get down to it, of course, the best of the best have those technical skills on top of it, but they don't get there without the conditioning. They don't get there
Correct.
without the weight room. Whereas the
Yep.
baseball player needs to figure out the technical side first.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I think that we hold our players back for sure without introducing more technical stuff early
Yeah.
and letting them work through. Like we should be having kids be playing baseball at 4 years old, and not baseball, obviously, t-ball starting somewhere, but
Yeah. Yeah.
you should be really pushing that. And I agree 100% with the practice thing, how rec
Yeah.
leagues think that they're going to get away with no practice and think the kids are going to be able to A, get better, or B, even want to keep playing.
Sure.
That's, if you're looking at it as a business side, it's a sales model that's asking to fail.
Right. 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 That's one thing I loved about sandlot ball as a child was that repetition because we
Right.
played practically every day. I mean, it was,
Right. For myself, it was a neighbor. And unfortunately, I never got to the point. Like we did sandlot ball until his yard could not contain us anymore. But he literally his father built a wiffle ball stadium in his yard. We
oh,
did
cool.
that every single day of the summer, every
Sure.
year until I moved
Sure.
over to this house.
Yeah.
But at least I had that. Where
Yeah.
most kids really, even my age, really their summers were spent, if they had a summer camp, they spent a little time outside. And most of them really were inside doing video games already.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. And I built that in a storyline too as one of the ingredients that helps get the kids interested, in other things other than baseball, video games and the easier ability to play soccer and then lacrosse. I don't know about out there, but lacrosse has gotten very big out here,
Lacrosse is huge,
particularly with the high school kids.
Yeah, it's huge with there's even club lacrosse teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's massive. I mean, my cousin was a D1 lacrosse player.
Yeah.
So it's really something to behold that how lacrosse has taken over really kind of the niche that baseball had at one point.
Yeah. Right.
One thing I think that's been lost too is and I do still see it every now and then with my club team, but you don't see too many girls competing in baseball every now and then. Like it's not as often as it used to be when I was a kid. And I'm sure even more so when you were a kid. When you grew up, when there was that one athletic girl or two athletic girls, they were playing baseball with you, and some of them would beat you up, especially since they hit puberty early. They just beat you up for a year or two.
Yeah. Well, I was obviously from a different era because we didn't have any girls at all playing baseball. And, I grew up in the 60s and early 70s. And in that era, it was all boys.
All boys.
All boys. Yeah.
Okay.
The girls had their softball and the guys had baseball. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that used to be a huge thing, maybe more so maybe when your kids were growing up. When I want to say really young, the best of the best girls wouldn't play softball. They would go up and play baseball.
Play baseball, yeah.
As long as possible. Most of the time it didn't make it until high school. It ended before then. And
that's faded now. You see that?
I only see one girl, and I think it's purely because the girl is a boy's brother. And they're both competing, it looks like, every day. So the girl is like on par. She's about a year and a half younger. Yeah. That's the only instance I've seen.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. But there's no real link there. Softball just seems so tough. And a lot of it has to do, I'll put a certain amount of blame, to be honest, on the way that parents handle their kids, especially when it comes to younger girls. I don't think that has anything to do with the main issue we have, especially with no practicing with rec leagues, because that really hurts softball. The fact that they don't practice.
Sure.
But with softball, the inability to allow your child to be parented or coached in our sport to be coached without oversight, without your input. It hinders, it really, really hinders, I think, the progression of young girls.
Yeah. There's that constant pressure, coaching from the stands, and not always in a positive way,
Right.
So I totally see that.
Yeah, and I think that affects both baseball and softball, but I think that heavily affects softball over over our baseball. Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah.
So something I really wanted to get into, Mr. Peterson, I kind of mentioned it earlier before we talked, was the cultural ramifications of a second Civil War, or really what led up to that second Civil War, because I think it's a huge point to make when we're talking about our society today. You really are just making comments on what we are today, really what it seems like, and pretty accurate, if I might say.
Yeah, absolutely. So that particular part was seeded by an article I read several years ago about games that kids used to play before the first Civil War, and now those games are extinct. They've been lost to history. Right. So that was another major component that went into the ingredient that made up the storyline in my book. And in my book, again, baseball is on a downward trajectory, and then there's a 3-year strike, and then the war comes along in 2061 and totally kills what's left of the sport. And the war winds up causing unbelievable amounts of damage, because when you look what is going on in the country right now, you see this roiling anger,
right,
that excuse me, that continues to boil and boil, and there's only so much pressure in the pot.
Right.
And at some point, it's going to blow. The other analogy I like to use is trajectory. And when you look at the trajectory that the country is on right now, unless an external force comes along and intercepts the trajectory, there's only one logical endpoint when we get to the end of it, and that would be, horribly a second armed conflict.
Right.
And in that conflict, because there's so much anger that's been built up over all these decades, conservative versus liberal and everybody else, it's like this unleashing of a fury that consumes the nation. And when it's all said and done, spoiler alert, but at least in the book, when it's all said and done, several years after the end of the war, I mean, the population's been totally decimated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that
for good reason,
back.
I think that the storyline, I think it really did it well, if you don't mind me chiming in here. When I think you kind of pushed it to the limit of saying that we really came to the point of non-agreement. We really came to the point of not being able to understand each other.
Yep.
And I think when things get to that point, you push the boundaries of what you will do anything to get rid of this other people, these people that you no longer live in sync with.
I mean, we're now at a point where it's, no prisoners and no compromise, and that's it.
But with our technology today, what you describe happening is what the potential is. And I think it's important, really important for us to denote that.
Yes. And that was there's a very conscious thing in my mind when I was writing. I'm like, you know what, I want this to be a fun book. I want it to be a clean book, right?
Right.
I want to be for like 12 and up. But at the same time, there's this undercurrent that's in the storyline of what happened 100 years earlier and how god awful it was. And the purpose of that undercurrent, my intent was to make the readers think about where we are currently as a country and where we could be headed unless we relearn the art of getting along with one another, even when we disagree.
Right.
And there really is an art to that,
It takes time and practice.
It takes time. It does. It takes time. It takes tolerance. It takes, to a certain extent, forgiveness and grace.
Certain extents. No, that's
right.
That's a lot of it.
Right. Sure. Absolutely.
And so, did you just mention grace?
Oh yeah.
So I actually had a question for you regarding that. In your book, it seemed like there was a mention of it. I remember when I'm trying to think of the actual name, Grandpa Moses. When Grandpa Moses he's thinking about going in and he's not so sure. He goes and checks in on that chest, but he leaves it alone for the day.
Leaves it alone, yeah.
And then the next day he gets that calling. Was that a little grace there? A little
a little plot build up there,
like
and then obviously when the boys come, then there's there's finally that opportunity. But
right,
Grandpa Moses is a little bit mean, and a little bit some other people, and I wanted to make sure that there was a faith thread in the story, and not an in-your-face proselytizing type,
not at all,
but just there, subtle and there and present is kind of a way to, show people what I would call a true north compass heading, because I think the country to a large extent is losing our true north. And there was a poll that came out about a month ago saying that 60% of the country now identifies as being atheist. That was really shocking.
Now, is that atheist or atheist and agnostic?
I honestly don't remember. I know atheist was in there. So,
I'm sure.
But 60% is a big number. That's a big
huge
number. And when you lose that true north, your moral. What is your moral compass then?
It's non-existent.
It's non-existent, or it's something you make up in your head.
Yeah, right. It's forever changing. The goalposts are moving.
It's subjective,
right?
And it can be. Oh, by the way, since I don't like you, we need to get rid of you.
Right.
Extrapolate that thinking. 40 years out, what could happen, right?
Right. Exactly. And it's craziness because you see it in our society now by way of the voting polls, right? Every single 4 years or every even 2 years, you're seeing the voting polls come out. And it just seems like people aren't voting with intent or intellect. They're voting with anger. It seems.
Yeah.
And you see it with policy coming out where we know this policy is going away in 2 years or 4 years, but we're going to enact it anyway because we know it hurts these people or it makes them angry.
Yeah.
And it's become no longer a point of compromise. We're not even heading in a stable direction. We're now at the point of cutting off each other's knees just so that our heads are above yours.
Yep. I've been following what's been happening with the new Congress and how they're eliminating some members from certain committees.
Sure.
Without, I'm not going to comment on my feelings about the right or wrong of that, but the precedent was set in a previous Congress when they did the same thing. So
right,
is this payback? I don't know, but it's a horrible thing.
Right, because now the snowball started.
Correct, the snowball has started. And the other thing was I could give a hill of beans who was sitting behind the president of the United States when the State of the Union was being given.
Sure.
I really wouldn't care who was sitting there. If they had torn up the president's speech, I really wouldn't have cared if they were Republican or Democrat or anybody. I would be extremely upset and extremely concerned. And yet we did see that happen. I thought it was a horrible, horrible precedent to tear up the president's speech on live TV, live worldwide television.
Right.
It sent a horrible message to the world about where we're at as a country as far as our inability to get along with one another.
Right.
But
I mean, that the precedents, I would say the precedents broken over the past, we'll say since the turn of the 2010s, I would say the precedent's broken in Congress and the presidents and the White House.
Yeah.
They don't stop coming, it seems like.
Right.
It seems like the next guy is just willing to one up in rule breaking the next.
Yep. I remember, when Bill Clinton was elected.
Oh, sure. This is always a fun one. Yep.
He had Congress for a couple of years, and then Newt Gingrich came in.
Oh, sure.
He had the contract with America. And whereas prior to that, the president was kind of governing kind of a little bit further to the left.
Right.
Than I think what he campaigned on. Once he lost the House, it forced him to come back towards the center. And the interesting thing is, his best years as president was during that time when both sides had to come and compromise and get stuff done for the American people.
Right. I mean, if you go and look back on a track of the United States and when our economy has flourished, it's generally speaking when you have one ideology or one pillar in the White House, and then the other two are different.
Correct. Yep. Correct. You see that with Reagan too.
Correct. Too. Absolutely great example.
Yep. He had that, and him and Tip O'Neill got along famously, and Tip was a Northeastern hardcore Democrat. Of the Kennedy persuasion, but him and Ron, they were able to see things that they could agree with and find that common ground.
Right.
And again, get stuff done for the people. And we have definitely lost that. And it's a very, very concerning development.
Yeah, it's very sad. And it doesn't seem like, because you would hope that the private sector would kind of pick up where the public sector is falling off. It doesn't seem so much. It seems like the private sector is fully capable and fully willing to just stay set in their ways. Next guy will eat the next guy. And not that, like, that's kind of how the market's supposed to work. So you don't blame them, but you just wish, you hope that somebody would fill the void as a leader that we kind of need in the country. Yeah. And it's just failing on all fronts, it seems, right now.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look around, it doesn't matter if you're looking at the federal level or the state level or at the city level. I mean, all I see is wreckage.
At the city level, sometimes it's the worst.
All I see is wreckage. I don't see any sign of hope anywhere. Here in Illinois, with the country, there's a couple of places that, I don't want to get too political, but there's a couple.
Oh, this is places. The show to do it, Mr. Peterson.
All right. Well, I like what DeSantis has done in Florida, but then there's his detractors that hate his guts, and
right.
I like what Kemp's done down in Georgia.
Sure, but look at everybody around
detractors.
him. Yeah, right.
But when we have the amount of divisions that we have right now, and they keep snowballing and snowballing and snowballing, even though you might have some bright spots, the writing on the wall is pretty clear to me that we need an external source to come in and interrupt this trajectory in order to prevent an incredible tragedy from happening. I've got 3 of my own kids. I have 3 stepkids. I've got 8 grandkids, and I worry about, what are they going to see down the road when I'm gone, because things are so bad right now. And like I say, I don't like. There's very few bright spots.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things that we need to focus on is not losing our sports, for sure. And I think that, one of the things that your book does is kind of promotes that feeling that we need to get behind the stuff that really does truly bring us together. Because honestly, no matter what color of your skin, no matter what your political view, no matter what language you speak, baseball speaks baseball.
Absolutely.
That's it. Or football speaks football.
Sure. You come together, you sit down in a seat, and you can be politically polar opposites, and you're there for the love of the game, and strike up some friendly conversation and hopefully that can carry over into other areas of the day, other areas of the night, other areas of the week, and help spread some seeds of kindness and friendship and Americanism that is so lacking these days.
How is your church league? How is it made up? Are you still playing now?
Yes. In fact, we just had a meeting the other night, getting ready to have
your
our
season starts soon.
Yeah, not till later April.
Right.
But I became a commissioner of the league back in like 2006 or 7, something like that. And at that time, it was we were almost on the verge of collapse. We had 8 teams. They were all Protestant. And I said, there's a lot of churches in this town. There's no way that we can't turn this ship around. So
right.
I went on a recruiting mission, and eventually, with a lot of help and I think some blessings from the good Lord, the league exploded. And
really,
at one time, we had 42 teams in the league from 30-some churches. We had Protestant, evangelical, Catholic, mainline, independents, and we all got along. Really? I don't want to say it was kumbaya every inning, but
right.
We all got along. We went on the ball field, we had fun with one another and fellowship, and forgot the troubles of the day or the troubles of the week, and
that's what it's all about.
Had some glorious fun on the ball field. So, we took a hit during COVID. We shrunk down to 20 teams.
Okay.
Then we're back up now. We got we're gonna have this year probably 32, 35 teams.
You're really back up.
Yeah, we came back pretty strong.
Very good. Good for you guys. So that's really good to hear. And so kind of just going to parlay a few questions off of this. How do you feel about the World Baseball Classic?
I never really got into that.
I'm sure it's tough.
I'm so interested in spring training when it starts. It's like, okay, what is this World Baseball Classic? I get it's kind of like a World Cup for baseball or an Olympics thing for baseball. It probably would help if I was able to go see a couple of games of that. But they're always in the spring and
sure
they're usually far away, right? I mean, are there any games here?
Actually, I'm curious because I know there is games in the United States this year.
And all down Florida and Arizona.
Let's see.
I'm hoping to get out to spring training this March. I want to go maybe take in a game at Glendale, see the Sox, and go to Mesa, see the Cubs for one game. So I'm primarily a Sox fan, but I do enjoy the Cubs.
So there will be games in Miami and Phoenix.
Okay.
Yeah.
At the same time in spring training, right?
It goes from March 8th to March 21st.
Yeah, right? Same time as the spring training.
Back in the middle. Yep. Yeah. So what they did, the reason that they started that was because we were potentially getting kicked out of the Olympics.
Yeah, right.
That was the original reason.
Right.
And we ended up getting kicked out. That's what happened.
Yeah. And what does that tell you? What is that? There's a little thing too. It's like, okay, I guess they weren't selling enough tickets or getting enough ratings in the Olympics for baseball. Why else would they get rid of it?
Well, some of it too is also that some countries just don't play the sport or they won't sponsor the sport, right?
Yeah.
So some of the countries that their main batted sport would be cricket or whatnot, they'll just say no outright. And then some of them are actually anti-American and against it for that reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I believe that that's partially some of the issue with this next Olympics because it did get reintroduced back in the COVID year of 2020.
Yeah.
Now it's back away for the next.
Oh, they took it away for the next one?
Right. Okay. Right. So it's not going to
be. Well, once you get outside the United States, I mean, the most popular sport is football, but their football is what we call soccer. So
right. Now that also brings up an interesting point. And part of the reason it took me a few seconds to get into your book now. So you didn't mention too much about Latin American baseball or Asian baseball. I was curious as to why.
Well, in the storyline, the country is in horse and buggy mode for an extended period of time.
Right.
And there's, as big as we were, there's no other country that can come to our aid because all the other countries are also trying to help themselves recover. Because if you recall, there's that computer virus that wreaks a lot of havoc, and that's a global event when that happens. So everybody's just more, totally focused on themselves versus, let's go send, X amount of dollars to go help the U.S. or help Canada or anybody else. They don't have the money to do that because everybody, like I say, is focused on getting their own country back on its feet.
Right. And yeah, I just thought it was interesting because in the back of my mind, there is some parts of, the DR maybe or Puerto Rico that they may love baseball more than us right now, especially right now. And just for that reason, if there was a nuclear strike, a world-ending blast, or any of the combination, they might be our only hope to keep it alive in the back of my mind.
Yeah, possibly. But the big thing is, though, is that if when you lose the sponsorship of America,
I thought that was a good point, though.
Economically and supplies and everything else, and just the keeping of the heartbeat of the game going. If that
and I think that's a good point.
What does that do? So
I think that, I guess if we're going to realistically with your timeline, I guess you're thinking their funding probably ended well before our war started.
Yeah.
Realistically.
Right. So, I can see your point too, but, I do think there's a lot to be said about.
I think that's a huge point to be made.
Yeah. We're the biggest promoters of the game. And if we're gone, that throws up a big question mark.
Well, really does. It really does. And then it's no longer our pastime it's where it comes from. And, I just got to say, most of the values, pretty much every value you're promoting in your book, I think it plays a huge role in our recovery as a nation.
Sure. Absolutely.
I would hope that everybody would go take a look at this book, even if you're not a fan of baseball, to be honest with you, because what it opens your eyes to is how much our country's suffering, how much we need to heal.
Yeah.
And really how easy some of the implementation of fixes can be. Yeah. I think. So how do you feel about saying grace at dinner? If I could get my family to do that, all the time.
All the time we say it. So it's just it's baked into our lifestyle is that, you gather at supper table, you bow your heads and say a prayer of thanks, because ultimately we didn't put that food there. Good Lord put the food there. So, and I, that's only in my book, I wanted to make sure that was in there too, was there's been a reset in family dynamics in the post-war America. And
that's huge.
The family dinner table gathering is a big part of that reset.
So huge.
And that comes out, I think, in the storyline.
I think not only comes out, was one of my biggest questions for you. Yeah, was, where does that come from? Deep seat, I could tell it's family. It's a long time coming. And it's definitely lacking in my own family to a degree. It's lacking in a lot of families entirely.
Sure.
And think about the amount of families that are just completely split, it's impossible to have that family dinner.
Right. And then you look at our schedule too. There's so many families. It's like dinner is in a fast food line on the way to some practice of something,
right.
Ballet, soccer, baseball, football, basketball, gymnastics, whatever, and maybe not everybody's there. Maybe there's a latchkey kid at home doing whatever they're going to do while the other part is out doing this. And and there's no family cohesion the entire day. And when I grew up, we had dinner every night around the supper table, and table grace was a part of that. But I think an important part of just the simple idea of a family sitting around a dinner table, it's like therapy.
Oh yeah.
You get to take turns sharing with one another the triumphs and tragedies of your day. And in that, there's time for laughter. There's time for acknowledgement of, if there's something painful. There's time for rendering encouragement or even aid if the situation warrants. And so it's just this beautiful thing that can happen around a dinner table, and when it becomes a regular part of a family's lifestyle. And even if even if the family's broken via divorce or death, I mean, it's still whoever's in the household. If you can somehow find that way to carve out that niche of time to come together, it is so beneficial. And so I wanted to put that in there in the story. It almost reads a little bit like Ozzie and Harriet or Leave It to Beaver. You got this futuristic America with hovercraft cars, but then all the families gathering around the dinner table like in the good old days. And that was very intentional.
Right. And what I really loved about that aspect was it kind of countered another book in my mind. So I'm sure you've at least heard of this book. Maybe read it. Have you read Brave New World? Aldous Huxley?
No.
Okay. Fantastic book. But it's a counter to yours, kind of, in a way, I guess, really dystopian. And what I pictured in my mind when I was reading the scenes of your book, especially around that family dinner table, was the opposite of what was going on in that book. That book was all about dystopian, was all about basically the complete breakdown of familial values. There was no longer any sort of self-control whatsoever in the society. It was all based on keeping yourself up with your drugs and making sure that you're satisfied and full of pleasure at all moments.
Sounds depressing.
But it was a horror of what America could become based on, I believe, 1920s, 1930s literature. And like I said, it just counters to what you're expecting with your novel, because what you're really thinking is this is what we need to get to. We need to get to a place where this is our goal with family values, because if we don't, the opposite is that other book.
Correct. So, overall, I said this earlier, I wanted the book to be entertaining and clean and fun, but also to project a sense of hope. Sure. And when people read the entire book, that is a word that keeps coming up in the reviews, is the word hope. And I think that's important because we need that now. We need this in America. We need hope. And I think, with a re-understanding of family dynamics, with re-embracing, the strong faith tradition that's embedded in our country's history, and then the idea of compromise and getting along with one another. I mean, all these things, all these things, when you put them together, I think hold a promise that we could avoid this tragedy that we're headed for. Right. But that I pray and I hope that, we never get there. So
I totally agree, Mr. Peterson. And, I think that your book, I hope it is a bestseller one day, but I think it holds a really important value, even if it doesn't get there to the point of, we need to really hold near and dear what we individually believe is near and dear and should be held highly. And even if it doesn't mean that, everybody in the world is going to follow baseball, which me and you both know that's an unrealistic goal.
Yeah.
Having this mindset in the back of our minds that if we do let it slip much further, we're going to lose this. I think it's an really important thing to keep with us.
Yeah.
And it's not just for baseball, because that extends the metaphor out to our country, out to our family, out even further than that, even with our relationship with God. And it doesn't matter what your relationship with him is or how you even feel about it. If you really think tarnishing that idea of a higher being is a smart move, go back and read some of it.
Right.
Go back and read some of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Mr. Peterson, it was an absolute pleasure. I think I've gotten everything answered I can out of the book, and now I need to go finish it. Honestly.
Yeah, and then leave a review. I'd love to have your review.
I will be leaving a review.
The book is actually doing well. It's doing a lot better than most self-published books. It's not a bestseller yet, but it is in the bestseller listing in some Amazon categories.
I say we try to pump the numbers up. Yeah.
So baseball and softball fiction books. I just looked today; it hit number 12. So it keeps going.
Okay.
Keeps going up and down, but it is doing okay.
I think we could try to push that up a little bit.
You're podcast number 13 or 14 I've been on.
Good.
And I know, after the end of every conversation I have with hosts, they really like the storyline, and I'm hopeful that at some point this thing really gets another extra set of legs and really can take off, because I think this is it's an important story. I think it's the right time for this story, and I really think it could help the nation at large. If this were to really take off to another level. So
I agree wholeheartedly, and I will absolutely do my part in getting it out there. Like I said, I got a few people I think would definitely be interested. And Mr. Peterson, I think I'm going to have you on at least once more. It was really a pleasure.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Thank you so much for coming on. Next time I say we shoot it about some real baseball once the season starts rolling around. See how your spring training went.
That would be fun.
All right, Mr. Peterson, I say we catch up. We'll say right after spring training closes up, you're back home. How about that?
Sure. That'd be
great. All right. You have a great rest of your day, Mr. Peterson.
You too. God bless.
All right. For everybody who made it there through the end, I thank you so much. Be sure to give us a good old, subscribe, like, all that fun stuff. I don't love asking at all. You know me. So other than that, that was an interview with Douglas Peterson, and he wrote the book, The Death and Resurrection of Baseball, and he pen named that under William R. Douglas. So be sure to go check that out. It was one hell of a read. I just got to be honest with you. I had a lot of fun with that. I had a lot of fun in the interview. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and be on the lookout for some more fun stuff. A lot of interviews like this are going to be coming out. We got a big thing in the works downstairs over here, so hopefully you guys get to see that soon. And we also, of course, are going to be pushing a lot of more fun, enjoyable stuff for you guys, the viewer. So be on the lookout for all that stuff soon. Thank you again so much, and peace out.
I'ma make all these bitches say, damn, I wish I would've fucking stayed. I wanna be something, not nothing. Trapped inside my dream and I'm running away from these demons. But the feeling's so good, I'ma keep